Throughout the multiple engagement survey that we've done in PeopleCues, we've seen scores on all these three metrics go tremendously high and eventually result into a positive performance management process that we run.
So I think you all have both the strengths. You all have built a survey and instrumentation that is very solid, and you all also have benchmarks that help us with insight and help us pick which areas to focus on.
So no matter what journey of startup or your company ecosystem you're in, PeopleCues is something. They have a product which will support for you, and if not, the team is agile enough to sort of customize it and offer it for you. So Misho is India's largest growing e-commerce platform at this point in time. We started at about 2015 and we've grown tremendously since then. In the multiple charters that I handle, one of the charters that I lead is performance at Misho. The whole focus of the charter is to drive a more meritocratic and an objective performance management.
I lead the HR Centers of Excellence, largely focusing on two angles, being a people-centric workplace and maintaining a very high talent density workplace as well. So these are two of the goals that I lead. Our mission is to democratize e-commerce, right, for the entire country. And we've been successful largely in at least to an extent where we try to bring people who previously were not on e-commerce platforms into the market. So I think Meesho has been one of those companies which has had a very clear people focus and people strategy over the years. Overall, our company is built on certain mantras or values, as we call them. Two which are very core to HR and what we do as a people function are the people-centric workplace, which is one mantra, and hire and grow exceptional talent, which is the other mantra.
The way we've designed our processes is to keep the user at the center of each and every process that we eventually work with. So let's say if I have to stem into performance management, what exactly does Meeshoite want and how do we evaluate Meeshoites in terms of performance as a user at the center is how we've developed around the entire philosophy of performance. Similarly, as engagement, our whole philosophy of driving more people centricity, which is the value at Misho, comes from how we eventually figure out problems from users, which PeopleCues sort of helps us with.
Yeah, I think performance management is a much debated topic, and over the years, I think Meesho has also evolved in the way we did performance management. And the way we were looking at it was, or some of the challenges we had were from our own business that came up from our business leaders were, how do we measure performance more continuously? We didn't have systems that were able to measure performance continuously. How do we make it easier for people to give feedback and not have too much friction in the process of giving feedback itself? And other such problems around just user interface and tool access and the way people just basically access the tool, the platforms they use to access it. So I think several such challenges existed. But at our core, we wanted to make it an easy, simple process for everyone to understand, access easily and do it quickly. And do it as a part of their day-to-day job rather than at the end year or the mid-year.
Before PeopleCues, our philosophy of performance was more time-bound. That we'll do, let's say, a mid-year, we'll do an end-year, and that's what eventually will lead into performance. When we went back to our user, we deep dive into the problems identified, we figure out that we want to make this process into a more continuous and a flowing outcome.
And that led us to explore tools in the market, different tools that we wanted to look at. And along the way, PeopleCues is one of them that we kind of evaluated. Like any other organization which does such a search, we had a series of must-have requirements, good-to-have requirements, etc. But as I said, I think the core principles that we were looking at were simplicity, fast or easy access to the tool, to the platform through integration, immediate feedback that people can give through mediums that they regularly use, not having to log into a separate portal, then give feedback, etc. And something that business leaders can use at any point during a talent review, during a conversation, to pull up easily and look at data, right?
So one thing that we were afraid of, and we actually took a bold experimentation, was the change in philosophy, which I was talking about, right? So when we changed from a time onto a more continuous performance philosophy, the biggest risk for us was that will our employees sort of move into that continuity nature? Will they get the philosophy right or not? And will that actually be translated on the platform the way we have actually envisioned it to be implemented? So PeopleCues, first of all, beautifully helped us implement that.
Another thing that came to our mind based on our previous experience was to have a team which supports us regularly, right? An active team from the vendor side who can provide day-to-day support for us, who can respond immediately to queries, whom we are able to vibe with and work with in a similar startup mentality. So at Misho, things change very fast. So we wanted someone who's also used to being able to change so fast and adapt. So I think all these factors played a role in us choosing PeopleCues, and some of these we did not find in some of the other vendors.
Next is, in terms of performance, we tend to try track a couple of metrics from the engagement survey also that we run with PeopleCues. A couple of them are like, am I aware of my goals? Do I have frequent one-on-ones with my managers? And eventually, do we see meritocracy in the process? Throughout the multiple engagement survey that we've done in PeopleCues, we've seen scores on all these three metrics go tremendously high and eventually result into a positive performance management process that we run. I think last but not the least, two other things which are more or less intangible are that the effectiveness of the process has increased tremendously. Now, what do I mean by that is that user adoption as compared to our previous tool has gone up substantially higher. We tend to take lesser time to close review cycles as compared to what we did before, and eventually take lesser business bandwidth and eventually drive a more efficient process.
I think the team overall has been great to work with, right? And I can't stress this enough that when you choose a vendor partner for a platform, especially a technical platform or a technology platform that you're looking at, I think you should have a good team at the back end to understand what your needs are in a clear way, functional requirements as well as technical requirements, and are quick to adapt, change, respond, and are people-centric in their whole approach, which is what we also want. So I think the team that X210X has brought together and to help us with has been great, and it's an additional call out that I'd like to give. We measure ourselves pretty strongly on key objectives. Whenever we take up an implementation like this, we do have very hard metrics that we drive or track rather. And I think 2 or 3 things that we wanted to move the needle on was we ask questions in the ENPS survey that is run by PeopleCues as well. There are certain questions around goals, feedback, performance. Do you get regular feedback from your manager? Are your feedback conversations of a high quality? Are you getting the right feedback from the systems that we have? Are your goals clear to you, right? These are all questions that we try to measure how we are doing as a HR team. And I think all of these, the question or the needle moved on them once we implemented this, because people found it easy to go and give their goals on the system, to give feedback to people, to understand what people are telling about them in terms of feedback. So I think overall the impact on these metrics has moved, and I think there's also an intangible impact that we haven't measured yet, but which is definitely there, is around the whole continuous performance philosophy. So we moved to a philosophy which is not just based on mid-year or end-year. We want people to give feedback to others at all times during the year, and that is something through PeopleCues that we've been able to achieve. So we've had a lot of good qualitative comments that, hey, I never even knew this is a blind spot for me, but I came to know, and the system has kind of enabled that for us. It's made it so easy for people to give us feedback. It takes 5 minutes for me to write feedback for somebody now, as opposed to with tools which don't have this feature, close to half an hour, 1 hour in the end year when I sit and write entire feedback for people. I think the other differentiator you guys brought in was around the Slack integration. So we use Slack to communicate internally. Our employees are used to Slack, right? So we just ping all work aspects on Slack, get it done quickly. And now we're able to give feedback also on Slack through the integration. So it's very easy for me. Like I said, 2-3 minutes, I can give feedback. It can help someone in terms of improving their performance then and there, rather than waiting till the end year to know what's gone wrong.
So if you're someone who's looking out for something which is either for a very small shop setup of let's say a 50 or 60 employee or a huge employee base as compared to Misho. So no matter what journey of startup or your company ecosystem you're in, PeopleCues is something. They have a product which will support for you, and if not, the team is agile enough to sort of customize it and offer it for you.
To any founder out there who's looking for a performance management platform, I think there are a few principles which are common to performance management. People need to be aware of their goals at the right time. They should be able to have access to instant feedback where possible. It should be integrated with the communication systems that you already have. It should be a time-saving, easy, simplistic process. You should have a good team that understands your functional and technical requirements. And you should have a process that is run across seamlessly, integrated with your other aspects like your surveys that you run or other HR aspects that you're working on. So I think PeopleCues is something that can really help you as a founder do all of those things. And the agility, user interface that is there, etc., are very helpful. So I think that would be my recommendation for sure.